Hi everybody, I'm Jeff Kelly. I'm here with my guest, Alastair Turner, who's a data engineer at Pivotal. I'm also joined by Tom Walter, who's Director of Sales at Zettaset. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Tom, why don't we start with you? For those watching who may not be familiar with Zettaset, tell us a little bit about the company and the role it plays.
Sure, thank you. So Zettaset is a developer and provider of encryption solutions, mainly focused at big data environments on the enterprise scale. So we have solutions that are specifically designed for NoSQL environments, such as the Greenplum database environment. Also for traditional databases, we also have solutions for object store environments as well as Hadoop.
Got it. So Alastair, we've been talking today a lot about data and analytics, but also the flip side of that is privacy and security. What is your take on where we stand in terms of the industry, in terms of the conversation around privacy when it comes to analytics specifically?
We're still having to figure a lot of that out. The question about trust is quite important, that customers trust enterprises to use their data well. The customers trust enterprises to make sure that data doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Right.
And so with a lot of the emerging regulation, one of the things that we're seeing in Europe at the moment is a lot more worry about breach notification. One of the very practical implications of the GDPR for our customers is that if any data is stolen, they have 72 hours to notify their customers of a breach, but only if the plain text is stolen. So we're seeing a lot more push for customers to encrypt the underlying data in the analytical environment, just to make sure that if it does get stolen, they don't have to deal with that reputational issue, and that they're doing the right thing to look after their customers in turn.
Mm-hmm. And Tom, how have you seen attitudes change towards data security and encryption over the years? Zettaset's been around for a few years now. In my previous life, I was a journalist and an analyst covering data and analytics. I remember Zettaset from a few years back. How has your perspective changed? How has the thinking around data security and encryption changed over the last few years?
So it's interesting. Basic human nature is taken over from my perspective in that until the regulations really came out and there were strict enforcements regarding not being compliant with these regulations. Some companies would adopt it, and they had good intentions of protecting their customers' data and protecting their own reputation, but it wasn't universally accepted. But what we've seen is that since the regulations have become mainstream, like GDPR coming up in basically a month, HIPAA, SOX, all of these others being enforced for a number of years now, everybody's seriously interested in protecting their data. What's motivating them to do that, who really knows? But at the end of the day, by being compliant with these regulations, it also absolves them of a significant liability. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the main driver for people in adopting these data protection solutions.
Mm-hmm. And for both of you, Alastair and Tom, I wanted to ask a question about culture and the organization aspects of this. There's of course the technology, and we'll talk a little bit more about Zettaset's solution and how you approach encryption. But I wonder, does there also have to be a change in the way enterprises think about using data and protecting data, considering everything that's happening in the wider world now with the Facebook situation and other places? Is there a cultural component or a process and organizational component to this, do you think?
I think there is a process and organizational component, and ideally, as Tom was saying, we should always have been doing this. Everybody should have been transparent about how data was going to be used, and ideally also destroying it at some point once they'd used it for its initial purpose. And we're seeing some of that enforced in law, but ultimately just following the letter of any regulation is not going to be quite enough. There is still this process of making the organization feel that data is something valuable that they have, and that it's something that customers have trusted them with.
Mm. You see that as well?
Yeah, we see that also, and what we're doing to help that along is we're providing a solution that makes it extremely simple and easy for organizations to implement these data protection measures. So for instance, our solution sits at a very low level in the stack, so there's very little implementation requirements. It's done very fast. You can do it with operational people. You don't need high-end cybersecurity personnel to implement our solution. And on the back end of that, there's very little ongoing maintenance that needs to be done with our solution. So it makes it very simple. It's truly going to protect their data and help their customers feel more secure that their data is in good hands.
And of course, we want to protect data, but you also want to be able to still use that data for all sorts of purposes. How do you balance those two from a technology solutions perspective?
Right. So, I'm a sales guy. I'm not a technical guy, so I can't give you the details on it. What I can tell you is that somehow we've figured out a way to not only protect it, but also make it usable with very minimal impacts to performance. We've done all sorts of testing. Our customers have done testing, and on average, with our data at rest solution, we see a performance impact of anywhere from 0 to 2 or 3%, and that's a number that users cannot see when they're running their applications, running their queries, etc.
And so, Alastair, talk a little bit about the partnership between Zettaset and Greenplum, and how that works, and how it can help a Greenplum user in terms of protecting their data.
So the set of problems that Zettaset solve around the potential leakage of data has to do with protecting the files at rest underneath the Greenplum database. So when you set up a Greenplum cluster, you would set it up on a set of disks protected by Zettaset. So if then any intruder got hold of the underlying image of the data, they wouldn't be able to use it. So for existing systems, there is an integration process where the data has to be moved onto protected volumes, but because of the low impact of the encryption solution, because it happens so close to the metal, that's a fairly predictable thing to measure in time and to execute.
Okay, great. Well, as we wrap up, how can Greenplum customers learn a little bit more about Zettaset and maybe even get started?
Well, probably the first thing they can do is reach out to Zettaset through our website and get in touch with me, and we can have initial conversations regarding their requirements, because that's really what drives what solution is the best fit for them. And then what we end up doing in most situations, we'll set up and run proof of concepts, just so our prospects can see firsthand, number one, what we're doing, that it's performing as advertised, and how it fits exactly into their environment.
All right, great. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I know it's a busy day here at the conference. You probably want to get back to it. I think the party's starting right now, so I'll let you guys go. But thanks again. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.